The idea of the public intellectual, I think in some ways there's a misconception of, or maybe it's not a misconception, of arts and humanities instructors not engaging with the public, being very, in addition to being like private people, that there's that idea that once the door closes, what happens inside the classroom kind of stays there. Or if it does get out onto the page, it's usually bound within like a thesis or a book that is not geared towards the public. Do you think that instructors have a responsibility to, or maybe not a responsibility to, or an impetus to engage with the public more about what they do in the arts and humanities, and use that as another way to enact a form of leadership?
Well, I think there's always been a tension between the rarefied world of the academy and what it does, and the outside world. As knowledge becomes more specialized, as we have become more compartmentalized within our disciplines and are trying to break out of that, we situate ourselves in an increasingly rarefied atmosphere, and that's problematic. I think that the work that we do as researchers has to be protected. There has to be sort of arm's length relationship between us and the outside world. We have to separate ourselves in order to think momentarily about what it is that we're doing, and not have the outside world impact on, or keep that impact at bay as much as possible in order for that work to take place. But then there's the counter movement, which is the relevance of the work that one does, and increasingly we haven't had to think about that relevance. And I personally think that thinking about the impact of one's research and thinking about making one's research more communicable to the outside world, which isn't to talk about dumbing it down, which is to talk about simplifying it. It's about making it not more transparent, but communicating it. I think that's extremely important, and extremely important in terms of training students for the impact that their work's going to have in the outside world. There is a place for speculation, there is a place for separating ourselves off in our studies, but that study exists in a larger world, and to think that it doesn't or shouldn't is a big mistake.
I think of it a couple of different ways. One is that we're contractually obliged to work on our research, so not to write essays for New Yorker. And if I, in an ideal world, I write essays for the New Yorker full time. But I'm an expert in a particular research field, and I'm at a research-intensive university, and my job is to write books. But what I tell my students a couple of things. One, that I write those books so that I can translate those ideas for them, and they are the public, and they take those ideas into the world. So what I'm working on right now, questions of religious toleration and liberty of conscience, are of immediate relevance to them. So I'm going to introduce them to the historical origins of those ideas and discuss their implications for the world today. And they're going to take that knowledge into the world. But they are our public. So I'm already a public intellectual insofar as I'm a teacher, especially of undergraduate students. But I also say to them, if you can write an error-free letter to the Globe and Mail today on an issue of pressing importance on the front page, you can just pass this course and go on out into the world because you've done, I've done my job. But invariably they can't, because they haven't gotten to that point where they can abstract ideas from material they read and understand and place them, historically situate them, or even situate them within a larger public conversation that's ongoing. So I teach them that material all the time. I'm always bringing in the paper. I'm always talking about ideas that are relevant to what we're discussing in class, and encouraging them to think of themselves as public intellectuals. So I think we do that work already. I don't think we need to apologize for the research we do, because it feeds our teaching constantly. And I always say to someone who says, well, nobody reads your books. And that's right, they don't. But what would the world be like if none of us wrote them? Literary studies would be exactly where they were in their inaugural moment. Nothing would change if we weren't doing this research all the time. So it doesn't matter that it's specialized and nobody reads it. I could write a book and then put it in a shredder, and that would be fine, because the research I've done for it will always shape how I'm teaching the literature I'm teaching.
It's true, it's the paradox. It's the thing that always comes up when there's controversy about spending public money on art. For instance, a sculpture in the front of some public building. And people say, well, that's just a complete waste of money. But then you ask the question, as you asked much earlier in the interview, what would the world look like if these things didn't exist? And it's the paradox. You can't really speak empirically to that, but if you took it out of the equation, all of a sudden the world would be a wasteland. So it informs, even if completely unconsciously, it informs how things transpire, as it were.